What's up, everybody? We are live on a Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock here. It's reserved for vets, content reserved for veterans, families, friends, people that know vets. That's what we do. I'm, of course, Matthew Blades. To my right is Chad from Mental Joe Apparel. What's up, bro?
What's going on, gentlemen?
And then on the bottom there, you've got a dude who just barely had enough time. He's so busy with his boards. To jump in and help us out. But Dr. Dave, our lead psychiatrist, how are you?
Always a pleasure. Good.
Yeah, awesome. I'm excited that we're all here today. We've got a cool little show planned for you, and we're going to bring in a guest. And you know me, I don't like to waste a lot of time. I was connected through this gentleman via my podcast manager, and I'm so glad that we got in contact because the crazy thing is he doesn't live too far from any of us. In fact, Chad, I think you and him actually live really close to each other. But Scott DeLuzio is the gentleman we're going to spend a little bit of time interviewing today because he and his brother were both deployed back in the mid 2000s. They were about 80 miles from each other on different bases. And sadly, Scott came back. His brother didn't. He went on to battle with his mental health. He went on to write a book that he just released this past August called Surviving Son. And he is joining us from his home in Surprise, Arizona.
Surprise, Arizona, yeah.
Today, Scott, welcome to our podcast, buddy.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to come on and share my story with you and your listeners.
Man, I got to play Who's Got the Better Backdrop? Chad from Mental Joe or Scott DeLuzio? Dang, what do you think, Dave?
Scott's pretty dialed in there, man. I got to up my game. I got to up my game.
Dave, who gets your vote?
Oh, man. I like what Scott's got going on back there. The American flag.
That's impressive. That's impressive.
It's awesome.
I will say mine is probably a little bit more busy than yours, so it could be a little more distracting. So I could see both of them being pretty good.
Listen, they're both awesome. You can see right behind Scott that he's got a case there, and it looks like there are a number of medals in that case. Are there a couple in that case that are particularly special to you?
That case in particular is actually has my medals in it. I was given that case by the first counselor that I saw after realizing that I needed to get some mental health treatment. He gave it to me. Someone had dropped it off or donated it or something like that. And he was like, I don't know what to do with this thing. And I was like, well, what the hell, I'll take it. And so I took it. And it sat in a closet for years and years, and I did nothing with it. And then finally, I was like, I'm tired of tripping over this thing. I have all these things. I might as well just put them in here and set up some sort of display here. So finally, I did that and put that together. But honestly, the one at the very top center of there is called the Combat Infantryman's Badge, and that is awarded to infantrymen who have actually been in combat with the enemy. And so that particular badge I was awarded for actions that took place actually the day that my brother was killed. And so that one would have had pretty significant meaning to me had my brother not been killed, but given all the circumstances of that day, it's one of those things that it's forever changed who I am and and stuff. So it really has a lot of meaning to me.
Is that flag above it his?
The flag that was that was draped over his casket is actually with my parents, but that one was flown over the Capitol for him, and so my parents were just so overwhelmed with all the support that they received as far as letters and gifts and other things like that. They gave that one to me so that I could hang on to it, and so I decided that it's a pretty fitting place to put it. So
yeah, Dave, I'm going to come to you in just a second, but Chad, I want to come to you right away as a guy who's been in battle too and had a band of brothers around you like this gentleman here. What do you think about when you hear somebody's brother being killed in action?
I mean, being at it in it alone is, mind boggling. But then, you get this news that you're only 80 miles away from each other. And, the last day on earth, you weren't even there to hold a hand or, say your goodbyes, so that hits home. I'm pretty sure, because that's just blood, that's someone you've known your entire life. You have your brothers who in arms, you left and right of you, and that's why you go to battle. But to have an actual blood brother right there close, I mean, I mean, that's a tough one to get over.
Dave, let me ask you, you've probably sat down with many men and women who experience loss, and whether it was a brother or a very close friend, are there some common threads there that people seem to experience?
Well, I imagine, Scott, you still had to finish out your tour.
Well, so actually, it was kind of interesting how it took place. So the day that he was killed, I was actually started my journey back home very shortly thereafter. So he was killed. I found out about it later on that day. About 20 minutes after finding out about it, we were in a firefight, and we were in some stuff there. After that firefight, I was flown out of the village that we were in, and that started my journey home. I was only supposed to have, I think it was 10 days or maybe 2 weeks or something like that, back at home for his funeral and things like that. But then I was supposed to come back home. But I was in the National Guard, and unlike active duty military, the National Guard has really two commanders in chief: the governor of whatever state you're in, and as well as the president of the United States, like the rest of the military. And at my brother's funeral was the governor from our state, and she approached our family after the funeral and said that she was going to order that I do not return back to Afghanistan. So no, I ended up not going back, but had it not been for the governor deciding to do that, I would have been back there.
Yeah, I think that was the right call. How did you feel when she said that?
It was mixed emotions.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was in a way I was glad, because I wanted nothing more than to just be home with my family and grieve and go through all that, be there for them so that they don't have to worry about me being over there. After dealing with all of this, that it just would have torn them apart. But at the same time, I was thinking about like all my guys that I left over there, all the other soldiers. Like, what if something happened to them? And now, not only was I not there for my own brother when he was killed, but now if something happens to those guys and I'm not there for them, like I think that would have completely torn me apart. It had something like that happened.
I have to ask you something really quick. You said that you got the news about your brother, and 20 minutes later you were in a battle. Is that the most rage you've ever felt in your life?
Oh, absolutely. It was pure homicidal rage at that point. Like I actually wanted people to come after me because I wanted to kill them. Like I was just straight anger, rage, everything. At one point I had this fleeting thought, like, I'm just going to go down there and just start killing everybody that I can. And I realized if I was to do that, then like my guys are going to have to follow after me, probably to retrieve my body, and that wasn't going to do them any good. And then, my parents would end up getting a second knock on the door saying that both of their kids were killed that day. That wouldn't have done anybody any good. And so it was like, if I didn't have anybody in the world that I cared about, I probably would have done something stupid like that. But I held myself back because I was like, this would just make things so much worse for everybody that I care about. And, I couldn't do that to him.
God, I can't. I mean, I literally just can't even imagine how much emotion must have been bottled up in you in that time period, Scott. It must have been. I mean, you must be able to almost go back to the moment now, right? I mean, it has to be so permanently etched in your brain, right?
Oh, for sure. I can, and I can feel the same, like that anger coming back, and like I can feel those same emotions and understand all of that stuff. Obviously I'm not at that same mental state that I was back then, but it's one of those things where yeah, I can vividly remember and recall so many details from that day that are just etched in my mind for probably the rest of my life.
So this is what's kind of cool about our podcast, Scott, is that we talk about mental health. And so Dave and Chad, I want to bring you both in, right? Because we talk about this all the time. People are going to come back. They're going to remember things. They're going to experience things. It's going to move through them again. And Dave, you've always got so many good things to say about this. So I'm just going to let you rip into how people can handle that when it comes up, what they can do.
Well, I'm glad that you're able to have some time to grieve. You know, from my point of reference, I don't think I've talked with anybody that lost their brother in combat, but certainly other people that have lost close friends. And then you have to get up the next day and go out and do it again. And so when do you have even a chance to grieve when you're on deployment? It's just, you know, it's just nonstop. And that deferred grief eventually comes back on you when you finish. I think for some of the reservists, it's harder in some ways than the folks that, you know, have a longer tour of duty, because you could be in theater and the next day you could be home sleeping in your own bed. And that transition can be very jarring. You don't have a period to kind of unwind from it a bit.
Yeah, and that's sort of what my experience was. Literally the day he was killed, I was in combat. I left Afghanistan the next morning. Started my journey home, and I was back home, let's see, 2 or 3 days after the day he was killed, literally sleeping in my hometown, in my bed at home, and really not having any time to decompress or process what had taken place. And while I was never left alone throughout that entire journey, there was always someone around me. You know, the flight home with all the other soldiers leaving, you know, going home on leave or end of their tour, whatever the case may be. People were always around me, but I didn't know any of them. And so it was like I had nobody to talk to. You know, all these people were happy to be going home. They're going to see their families, or they're, you know, getting a break from combat and everything like that. And I'm going home, and I felt like the hard stuff is just beginning at this point.
Yeah, and that's, Dave, that's one of my takeaways that I guess I've always kind of been pissy about with our government or just our military. You know, it's just that Scott's example right there. You know, you're removed from a firefight and your brother dying essentially 72 hours later, you're in your bed at home. Right. So for me, it's mind blowing that our government or our military doesn't have some kind of debrief, you know, hey, we're going to keep you here at the barracks, you know, for the next week and a half to make sure, you know, anything you need to talk about, anything we need to, you know, get off your chest, like have some counseling around. And I just feel we miss so many opportunities with all the rotations that happen to have somebody there to do that kind of.
Let me ask you, can I ask a question really quick, Chad, to Dave, which would be, what kind of a time period would be healthy? Is there a time period where, generally speaking, we could say people need X amount of days or a few, you know, is there something like that?
I don't think there's ever a really good answer. So I think back to the World War II guys that when they came, when they were done fighting in Europe, they had a long boat ride back, and everybody on the ship saw some of the same things. You know, maybe they just stood next to each other looking at the waves and not talking at all. Maybe they talked a little bit about it. But how long does it take to take a ship from Europe to the United States? You know, 10 days, 12 days, something like that. You know, so that process, I think, helped to some extent. But, you know, when Chad says, you know, gee, it'd be nice if the government did something. I imagine, though, that it would be something that would be kind of contrived and people really wouldn't want to take advantage of it, in the sense that, like, okay, well, we're not going to let you go on leave until you've had a certain amount of time to decompress, and feel free to talk to us about whatever. So, well, I'm not saying shit. I just want to get out of here. Right. So as much as it would be nice to offer something, I think sometimes it's nice to just get out and get around family. And so I don't think there's a good answer for it.
I almost look at it like an NFL, you know, concussion protocol, right? You get a concussion during a game. They know there's X amount of days that you know, you need to rest before you can get back on the field. Almost the same type of scenario. You know, I'd love to see something like that. Or, hey, you know, we've connected you with a couple hometown therapists that you need to go see every day while you're back for the next 2 weeks and report. Like, there has to be changes made. You know,
I like a protocol, Chad. I love that.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how cool it would be, like, to just kind of get handed a piece of paper and say, when you're leaving, you know, in 1 week you got an appointment here, in 2 weeks you got an appointment here, in 3 weeks you got an appointment here. That would be incredible.
That might make more sense, right?
Yeah.
To get somebody on the back end, so after they're out and after they're home, say this is like what's available to you in your town, and you know, feel free to call these people if you feel like you're in a crisis. Here's somebody that can help you manage a crisis. You know, we know you're going to probably have trouble sleeping. Here's somebody that you can talk to about that, and then kind of leave it a la carte, but not make it something that you're you know, mandated to do. Because I've talked to too many people that you know, you're out processing, you get the questionnaire about mental health, you say yes to one or two things, and now you're stuck for another 4 days because they're going to set you up with, you know, appointments and stuff. And you just want to get out. You just want to get out and see your family. And
that's exactly what my experience was too, because a few weeks after my brother's funeral, I got a call from our chain of command back here stateside, and they said I need to out process from, you know, to take me off of active duty status. And so I was like, okay, cool. So where do I go for that? And where we had processed in, so we lived in Connecticut at the time, but where we processed into active duty status was in Indiana. And so they said, well, you got to go back to Indiana to do all that. And I was like, are you shitting me? Like, I got to go all the way over there. Like, I just got home. Like, I just got back with my family, and I'm still like trying to figure out what the hell's going on with my life here. And now I have to go all the way over there. So they gave me like 3 days that I had to go to Indiana to do all the medical, the mental health screenings, all the stuff that I had to do, all the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. And I did it all in a day because just like what you were saying, I just pencil whipped all of it. I said, yep, no, I'm good. As far as mental health goes, yep, no, I'm good. I don't need to talk to anybody. Let's just check the box, move on. And I was far from good at that point. But the last place on earth I wanted to be was talking to somebody in Indiana, you know, however many hundreds of miles away from home. It's like last place I want to be is here. So no, let's just get this over with.
Well, the thing about grief that's so interesting, don't you think, Dave, is that it can take a little while to kind of mull up, and you can be sad right away. But I remember, like, right after my dad died, people would say, how are you? And be like, well, you know, I'm fine. It's later when the shit hits you and you're like, I can't call him. It's later when you start to realize and really notice that they're gone in all the little ways. And so, you know, it almost does need to be something that happens a little bit later. But what were you going to say, Dave? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, you got two things going on at the same time. So yes, you're grieving a loss, but also you just came off of a hot deployment. So you have all the things that go along with that. And I think the optimism of being home does carry people for a period of time. You know, you can kind of expect that your sleep is going to be shitty, and you're going to have anxiety, and everybody's on board with, you know, he just got back from deployment and we understand, you know, but then get into it 3-4 weeks, you know, and I think a lot of people have an expectation. Oh, well, you know, things should be going back to normal now. Now I'm putting the grieving part aside. I'm just putting the post-deployment piece on display right now. But so I think it's usually around a month or so that it's like, well, okay, I'm still not sleeping well. I still can't go to the grocery store. You know, I don't want to deal with people. I'm getting angry over nothing, you know, and that's where I think people have an expectation for themselves that things should get better, but also family members also kind of have an expectation. And then what do? A lot of times you don't know what the first step is to try to get a handle on it.
You're on mute, Matthew.
Sorry, I was mic'd up. I was muted. Sorry about that. I kind of want to ask a couple of really difficult questions, if you're okay with it, Scott.
Yep.
And some of that surrounds the death of your brother. And so the first difficult question that I have for you is, did you have that thing that you hear about from military people about survivor's guilt? And did you go through that whole bit about, why couldn't it have been me and all of that? And would you mind talking about that?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So, yeah, I guess the answer to the first question there is yes, I definitely had that. Growing up, I was the older brother. And so, I was the one looking out for my brother, making sure he was okay, making sure he was safe and all those kind of things. And, when you look back at our childhood, maybe I was, helping him stay safe from the bully in the neighborhood or at school or something like that. And like in the grand scheme of things, like that stuff didn't matter. I was there for that stuff, but I wasn't there for when he really needed me, when shit hit the fan and life really got tough for him. I wasn't there for him. And so I started rethinking all of these decisions that I made. I could have joined the unit that he was in, and I could have maybe been there with him. I started playing this what if game with myself and trying to come up with, like, what could I have done differently that would have made him still be here? What could I have talked him out of joining the military? Could I have done this? Could I have done that? All these things started flowing through my head. And, what I have come to realize is that you can what if the situation all you want. You can play that game with yourself and drive yourself absolutely crazy with all of these what ifs, but it's not going to change anything. Like, what happened is what happened. And now you just have to figure out, how do I live with this? How do I cope with this loss? How do I deal with all of this in a healthy way that makes my life not just come to a standstill where I'm just screeching to a halt and not able to move forward, not able to accomplish anything or do anything worthwhile with my life. Like, what do I do to move forward? And that's really what I had to focus on. And it took a while for me to realize all of that.
So then the second question that I think is probably tough is, you mentioned that you had your mental health battles. And so what did you get wrong at first? And what did you try at first that was clearly unhealthy? And what did you end up finding that, worked for you?
Yeah, I got a lot wrong at first. At first I was...
Chad, stop laughing at him. So did you. So did I.
I think, what though, hindsight's 2020. We could all look back and be like, what? Yeah, I screwed that up. But, and that's fine. As long as we learn something from what we did or didn't do, or whatever the case may be, and grow from that and learn from it. And, in my case, I found myself drinking way more than I ever had. I would not be able to sleep at night. I had the worst sleep of my life during this time period. And the only thing I found that would get me to sleep is just to be like blackout drunk. And I would just drink until I woke up and it was like, the next day or whatever. But obviously your sleep when you're drunk like that is not good, restful sleep like you need to have. And when you wake up the next morning, you're hungover, you feel like crap, you're just in a terrible mood. Like, everything is just worse off because of that. Right. And so I found myself in the mornings drinking a crap load of caffeine, coffee, energy drinks, whatever that I could get my hands on, to kind of wake myself up, get myself going so I can actually function throughout the day. But that I found was creeping later and later into the day, which was then affecting my sleep. And it just became this vicious cycle where I was never getting good sleep. On top of which we had young kids at home during this time. So no parent of young kids ever gets a good night's sleep anyways, but it was just compounded with all of this stuff too. And so I was dealing with all of that. I was dealing with anger issues. I was still just getting so angry and frustrated at the littlest of things. Like, as mentioned, I had little kids at home. They would spill something or make a mess or whatever, and I would just like completely flip out and start screaming. Like, what the heck? Like, I was not in my right mind at that point. It was just not a good situation, and it all kind of hit like a rock bottom moment when there's this one day, and I read about this in my book, where our dog was sick and she threw up because she was sick, and she threw up in our bedroom on the white carpet that we had, just inches away from the bathroom that had tile floor. And I just started flipping out and yelling and screaming, like, about how I was going to have to get a steam cleaner. It's probably stain the carpet. It's, I'm yelling and screaming like a irate maniac. And I'm like, why couldn't you have just thrown up in the bathroom? It would have been so much easier to clean up and all that. I was just not a very sane person at that point. I was just completely losing it. And I realized, like, this isn't me. This isn't the person who I was. It's not the person I want to be. It's the person who I am right now, but I need to do something to change this. And so that's when I decided the next morning, I woke up and I called the VA to make an appointment to get some help, because I was like, this can't keep going. I don't want my kids growing up with a jerk of a father. I don't want my wife to be married to some guy who she doesn't even recognize anymore, because that's really who I was. And like, something had to change. I couldn't keep being this way. And it just kept getting worse and worse. And the more I thought, like, oh yeah, I can handle this, it just kept going the opposite direction. I wasn't handling it, and things were not going very well for me.
I gotta say, man, thank you for sharing that so candidly. It takes a lot of courage to tell that story, and I appreciate it. I know the guys do too. Anything you gentlemen want to ask?
Well, just an observation. The story, the process that you went through dealing with the PTSD part of it is very familiar. I've heard similar difficulties from a lot of people over the years. But I think when you add to it the grief of losing your brother, that situation can get you stuck, because a lot of times people kind of wait for something to change before they can move forward. And there's nothing that can change that situation. So at some point you have to find a way of letting go of it and allowing yourself to move forward, or else you just get stuck in that cycle. And there's really no way to break loose of it until you can let go.
Yeah, and I think too, this is the reason, like, all four of us men are talking today and kind of have this type of a podcast, is to raise the awareness of, like, hey, these stories are echoed across how many different mountains and valleys and states throughout, America, with other veterans with the exact same, little different variables here and there, but for the most part, it's the anger, it's the drinking, it's how do I get better, what's my mental status, how do I get on this train. So like I've always said, the more communicative we are about this and getting this stuff out there, the more people it'll resonate with, and hopefully they'll go look for help, and just kind of a trickle effect to wrap mental health all into one bundle to try to get it cleaned up. So
okay, when I ask you a question, Scott, because Carrie, who's Chad's wife, they have a really good open communication about things. And when Chad turns into Hulk Hogan, they seem to have a good way of kind of bringing things down and together. How long did your family put up with your behavior when you were kind of spiraling? And were they trying to get your attention? Were they in your face about, why do you keep acting like this? Or did they just absolutely try to cater to you because they could see how much pain you were in?
My wife was an absolute saint throughout this whole process. Without her, I don't know how I would have turned out after all of that. When we got home, I was a new father. My son was born just like a month or so before I was deployed. So I didn't really know how to be a father at that point. I came home, and now my son was about 9 months old, and I'm home, and I'm like, I don't even know how to change a diaper. Never mind, like, how to be a father, And so my wife she actually just continued doing all the the parenting stuff, while she recognized that I was going through some stuff, I didn't need all this more stuff thrown on my plate. She figured, if I miss out on changing a few diapers, it's not like the end of the world for me. And so she was able to take care of all that stuff. And she realized I needed some time to process things that were going on and the stuff that I was dealing with. But it was all came to that one moment when I was basically irate, screaming at my dog about that, where she was like, "Look, you've tried to kind of get through this on your own, but you need some help." And I realized it too before she even said it. I was like, "This isn't me," but she was like, "Yeah, something's got to give here. Something's got to change." And I was like, "You're absolutely right. Something does have to change." And so that was what drove me to do that. But I mean, she was so great as far as listening to what I needed and listening to what I was going through, and I was able to talk to her about all sorts of different things, and she listened without any kind of judgment. It wasn't like when I would tell her how I was basically ready to go kill a whole village of people in Afghanistan, it wasn't like she was looking at me like I was some sort of crazed lunatic. She was like, "Okay, well, I kind of get it. Like, it sucks that you were in that position, but I understand why you were in that position." So she was absolutely great with all of that. But really, I think for me, the biggest thing was having the people in my life who cared about me and who I cared about, who I wanted to get better for. Because like I said, if she wasn't in my life, if I didn't have kids, or if I didn't have family around me, I don't know that I would have cared enough to get the help that I ended up getting.
What did you find that ended up working for you?
Just to be completely open and honest here, this is a little over 12 years now. I'm still going to therapy, doing different types of treatments. But at first it was just talk therapy. I would just go in, I'd talk to the person about what was going on, and he'd give some feedback, and it was just that back and forth kind of conversation. And honestly, just being able to talk about it helped tremendously. Just having someone there who would listen without judgment. I didn't have to feel like whatever I was saying was going to be reported to my boss, or overheard by somebody else. It was just me and another guy hanging out talking, and that to me was a huge first step. It wasn't the only thing, but there's other things obviously that have come over time, but that was a huge thing for me at first.
I just wanted to point out something. So, having a spouse that gives you the space that you need is so critical to being able to recover from this and find a path forward. Because I've seen plenty of situations where things go wrong, where the spouse is overbearing and they're completely stressed out, with new kids and dealing with all the stuff at home. And maybe there's even an expectation, you were deployed for the past year and I've had to manage all this by myself. Now you're back, you take over part of this, and right. and wanting to thrust you into things that you're not ready to deal with. But just being able to have that space to give you the time to work it out. And certainly when people have conflict, you have to be able to talk it out and work it out. But sometimes things escalate to a point where there's no talking right now. You just got to get alone and let things cool down a bit and try to sort some things out, and then maybe come back and reconnect later on. And it sounds like she gave you that space that you need, which is really terrific.
Yeah, she absolutely did. And like you were saying, there were some people that I know who had the exact opposite situation, where they came home and their wife was like, "I've been with these kids for the last year. You take them. I'm going off on a girls' trip to Vegas," right, or whatever. And now this person's like, "Holy crap! Now I got all this thrown on me." Yeah, you're a parent. You're supposed to be able to take care of the kids, but let's look at the big picture here. Like, you also have other stuff going on too, and you have to be able to deal with that stuff as well. And sometimes you need that support from those loved ones, your spouse or whoever is in your life that can help you.
Was there a particular part of your book, Surviving Son, which you put out last August, that was particularly hard to write?
So I actually wrote a part of the book that I kept just jumping over as I was writing the book. I just kept skipping it, procrastinating, putting it off. And it was about the day that my brother was killed. Not from my perspective, but I actually wrote, I took all the sworn statements that were gathered from the incident that took place from all the soldiers who were there. And I pieced together exactly what took place that day. And I wrote about that in the book. And that was hard for me to do because, I'm reading 20 plus different accounts of what took place from 20 different points of view and seeing all these different perspectives and trying to piece them all together. Not only was that hard just from a logistical standpoint, trying to put all these puzzle pieces together, but it was hard to basically reread the same incident over and over and over again 20 plus different times. That was a incredibly hard thing to do. And then I had to put all of that in my own words and try to summarize everything that took place. And that was hard to do.
Well, I imagine that you're also, getting visuals in your mind, imagining what that must have been like and imagining how it went down as you're piecing it together. Did you find that traumatizing in a way, or did you find it brought closure for you doing that? Because I know it had to have been an incredibly hard process.
Yeah, it was an incredibly hard process. In a way, I think at first it was somewhat traumatizing because I didn't really know what to expect. Like I knew he was killed. I knew the general manner and how he was killed. But I didn't know the details of everything that took place. I had some conversations with some of the guys who were there with him that day. And so I had vague details here and there about what had taken place, but not to the extent of, reading these actual statements, several pages each of them, detailing what took place that day. But after I started putting it together, it did bring some closure because I was able to, in a strange way, it almost felt like I was there because I had such great detail from all of these statements that, it almost felt like when you watch a movie, you're not there while they're filming the movie or anything like that. But afterwards you feel like you were storming the beaches of Normandy after watching Saving Private Ryan, right? Like you know what that scene looks like. It's gruesome, it's bloody, it's gory, it's awful, but you know what it looks like. And in a strange way, you feel like you have experienced some of that. Obviously not like it would have been in real life, but but that's kind of what it felt like to me. It was almost as if I was watching a movie of that or whatever. And so like I had that scene painted in my mind the same way that you might after watching a movie.
Chad, I would imagine that you had to go through something similar to that when you had your parachuting experience, where everybody had to come together, give their statements, talk about what happened. Or was that not the case? Did you do such a good job of brushing that thing under?
Yeah, it was more of a brush under. I'm sure I'm not the only guy that, got hurt and brushed it under, as well. I mean, like I said, I think there was close to 40 people that got hurt on that jump. Some of them, like I said, with compound fractures, you name it. And there wasn't much of a debrief to that mission just because it was such a shit show. Like people were pissed off. And like I said, if I remember correctly, the pilots of that ended up getting demoted because it ended up hurting the readiness category for Ranger Battalion because we lost so many guys, just to injury and shit. So I'm sure there was others that just kind of stuffed it and went about their way and said, "Oh, we're doing the Army thing or the military thing. Here's some Motrin and just kind of keep your mouth shut and keep pushing forward," kind of a deal,
Yeah. Hey, Scott, you talked about, talk therapy was really critical for you coming around. You mentioned that you tried a couple of other things. What other tools did you find along the way that were successful to you? I mean, Chad up here in the upper right, he's a huge proponent of ketamine. We talk about what that's been able to unlock and do for him along the way. Have you gone down any unique roads yourself?
After I started my podcast, the Drive On podcast, about little over 3 years ago now, and I started talking to people about things that they've done and experienced and stuff like that. And um, I talked to a guy who I actually served with, and he started talking about how he was dealing with PTSD, and he found art therapy to work for him, and how he went to an art class through the VA, and after the one lesson that he took, he was hooked, and he went out to the store. He bought all the art supplies. He bought the brushes and the paints and the easels and the everything, and he basically just threw himself into it and just was just so happy while he was painting that he wanted more and more of it. And so I started hearing him talking about it, and I was like, I don't know, I haven't picked up a paintbrush since like elementary school or whatever. So like, what what does this have like for me? But I was like, it just hearing him and knowing him who he was before he tried this, I was like, this doesn't even seem like this type of guy who would do this kind of thing. And and so I was like, well, let me give it a try. Let me get some some cheap art supplies and see what I could do. And worst case scenario, it sucks and I throw it away and I forget about it, and no big deal, right? And so I started doing it, and I was like, I see what he means, because you sort of get lost in it, in the work as you're there doing that artwork. It's like everything else is just kind of like noise, like that you kind of push away, and you just focus on like what's going on that canvas, or with whatever the medium is that you're working with. um, and that's the only thing that matters at that point. My wife actually, um, she said that one day I was painting, and um, I was doing something. It took all afternoon. I started like right around lunchtime, and it was like dinner time. And she was like, "Yeah, we're about to eat. Are you about done here?" And I was like, "Holy crap! I didn't even realize this much time had passed away, or gone by." And um, I was just so focused. And she told me that when I'm doing that, I'm actually much happier. And so I was like, well, I probably should keep doing that, because if it's
Yeah.
making me happy, like why am I going to screw with it? So there's actually some stuff on the wall
I
over
was
here that
gonna
I've
say, is that your stuff behind you?
yeah, over here, that's stuff I've done. And lately I've had some stuff going on that I haven't had a chance to paint it quite as often as I might like to do. Um, but seriously, when I sit down and I'm painting, it's like everything else is just not even an issue anymore, and I just focus on that. And it's kind of cool when I started doing that. I wasn't expecting that kind of a response from it.
I'm going to put his link in the comments right now, because I was on his site yesterday, and now it's all coming together, right? You painted all that stuff, all of the artwork that's on your site. You did.
Yep,
Oh
absolutely.
my God. You guys you gotta click the link when you get time, and go check it out. You do a great job, man. I mean, that painting
Thank
behind you is beautiful with the sunset. You can tell you live in Arizona.
Yeah, that actually, when I started painting that one, I wasn't even sure like how it was going to come out, or what exactly I was going to do with it. And I was like, oh, this kind of the sunset kind of deal is looking pretty good. I was like, let's roll with it.
Yeah. Man, that's great. I know you've got the book that people can go out and pick up, and I think a lot of people will after listening to this podcast. You offer some speaking services. What's the best way that you can honor your brother for the rest of your life, Scott?
Honestly, the book has been a big part of it, because I feel like not only is it my story, but it's his story as well. And by me telling it, and writing it in a book format, it's something that's going to outlive both he and I. And when uh, years and years go by, after I'm gone, someone's still going to be able to pick this up and read his story. And I feel like
Mm.
that is something that will help keep his memory alive for years to come. He only had 25 short years on this earth, and anything I could do to help share his story, even coming on a podcast like this, and talking to people, just having people listen to the story and hearing about it, it that to me is huge, to be able to help spread the message about who he was and the type of life that he lived. That to me is huge. And I appreciate this opportunity to come on and share it with you guys.
Yeah, I want to know, my little brother and I grew up playing catch. We grew up playing war. We grew up playing hockey together. What's kind of your favorite stories you think about you and your brother's childhood?
This actually was a little bit later. We did all the typical stuff that brothers do. We got into fights with each other. We played together. Like we get into a fight, and then like 10 minutes later, we're best friends all over again, and it was awesome. But there's this one thing I write about in the book. This happened a little bit later. I think we were maybe college age or whatever, but this goes to show just the type of person that he was. And we went to go, speaking of hockey, we went to a Boston Bruins game up in Boston, and they were playing the Montreal Canadiens, and Bruins won, and he and I, few beers deep after the game, we're getting a little rowdy. And as we're walking out, anyone who's ever walked out of a professional sports arena knows like the sea of people kind of waddling like penguins as they're trying to make their way out of the building. And my brother sees this whole crowd, and again, we just beat the Montreal Canadiens, and he starts a USA chant in this hallway, and he gets the entire arena to start chanting USA, USA, and it was so hilarious. Like I was like having trouble catching my breath, like at how funny this was, that he got this entire crowd of people. They don't know who the hell he is. It's kind of like the person who starts the wave and gets the whole arena to do that, right? But he gets all these people to start chanting USA, and it was just so hilarious. But that's just the kind of person he was, and it's like all sorts of things like that he did growing up, just really kind of stick with me and resonate, and it's those good memories that I like to cling on to. And I don't remember the little petty fights that we had as kids growing up. Like none of that crap matters. It's the good memories, the fun times that we had, the stuff that we got to do, playing catch in the yard, or wrestling each other on in our bedrooms. We take all the pillows off the beds and just start like wrestling each other on that, and just like beating each other up and everything. It was fun, and so it's those kind of memories that are sticking with me.
Yeah. Any final thoughts from you, Chad?
No, not on me. It sounds like he's got a grasp on a lot of stuff, and getting the right help, and it seemed like you're in a lot better space. Like you said, you still kind of have your daily struggles, but I appreciate you sharing your story. And hopefully, like I said, same thing resonates. I love the art therapy, probably something that I can relate to, kind of like with the different designs that we do for our shirts. Like I can hear that. Like I get into like, how are we going to sketch this out? What is this next design on the shirt looking like? So from a different art perspective, I can get where you can definitely get lost in that. So congrats on finding your kind of your wheelhouse on what helps you kind of keep moving along.
Dave, your final thoughts?
Yeah. Of all the different treatments that we've talked about in different podcasts, this is the first vote for art therapy.
It is.
It shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, I have an art background myself, and I know when you're talking about getting lost for hours and hours, an entire day can go by, and then you realize, oh my goodness, it's late already. But one other thing I wanted to say too is, and we've talked about this on previous podcasts, narrative memory is the highest form of processing trauma, right? So when you can finally figure out how the traumatic event fits into the story of your life, fits into the timeline, and you have a story around it. And writing a book and being able to talk about it puts you kind of right in that spot. That's kind of the peak of being able to process trauma, making some sense of it. Even if the situation itself didn't make sense, trying to find its place in the bigger scheme of things, and getting some meaning out of it, and ultimately some direction, and then if you can take it and use it in a positive way to help other people, that's just icing on the cake.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I wrote this book, initially it was really just, I wanted to put some stuff down so that it would be there for my kids, their kids, and future generations of people to read. But as I was writing it, I realized that there's more to the story than just what happened, and that there's some lessons that people can maybe take away, and hopefully it helps people. So time will tell.
Yeah.
Time will tell. I love it. Well, listen, so great. Do you want to say one more thing, Dave? Go ahead.
Yeah. The part of the problem is that trauma is so isolating. People feel like they're the only one going through it, and they feel like nobody can understand, nobody can relate. And it tends to cause people to sink inward and withdraw. And just having somebody else put their story out that they can read and kind of see, find some common points in there for themselves, it brings them back into humanity again.
Yeah.
Go hit that website. Go hit that website, please. The Drive On podcast is like almost 300 episodes in. This guy is clearly on a crusade. He's got the book called Surviving Son, which he just read and released last August. And I think a lot of people, I know Tommy Parsons has been watching us for pretty much the whole thing. And I want to say thanks for the comments. And he wants a signed copy of the book. I don't know if that's possible, but that's what he's looking for.
Signed copies of the book are definitely possible. Just reach out on the website. Actually, the Drive On Podcast website you can go to, and you can buy it there, and you can put in the comments, whatever you want for signed copies or whatever, and I'd be happy to do that.
I love it, man. Thank you so much for your time today. All four of us, all three of you guys, for sure. I really appreciated having you on, Scott DeLuzio, and we will hopefully bump and cross paths again. Okay.
I'm sure we will. Thanks so much.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Chad. Have a great afternoon. Dr. Dave, you too.
All right.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. We'll see you next Wednesday right here on Reserve for Vets.